King.
Mr Speaker, it's a pleasure to rise and speak in support of the Prime Minister's statement. And I would have to say that New Zealand has some tremendous opportunities going forward. Just reflecting on the last speaker, the Greens need to be very clear and articulate when they talk about their policies to the population. If they ask that New Zealanders are prepared to give away their competitive advantage in what we do in the most efficient way in the world, and that is turn sunlight and grass into protein. And we must acknowledge we cannot be so incredibly negative when we look at the clunky models within Kyoto that measure things in one-dimensional facts, and that when we look back on what those decisions were in the early 2000s, we see that there is a need for a far more dimensional view, because what comes first? Is it the solution? Is it the solution to global warming, or is it the issue confronting the world of feeding the 6 or 8 billion people that goes forward? So let's get some balance around that food, clothing and shelter and employment are so very, very important. And Mr Speaker, talking about employment, wasn't it wonderful to hear the inspiring speech, the Prime Minister's statements around boosting skills and supporting jobs? So this government is doing what no other government has ever done, and that is running a super efficient trade training system. And it was a real thrill to go down at the end of last year and touch base with the Building and Construction ITO and the Employment Hub down in Christchurch, and just see how far-reaching into the corners of the communities of New Zealand that situation is achieving. 300 trainees coming down from Rotorua to work with Fletcher Construction, Hawkins Construction and other construction firms. That is absolutely fantastic. So this government is launching a five-pronged new vocational pathway within the NCEA, and that is long overdue. We want to be able to become a nation of people who highly value those tech skills, those trades and the similar. So when you look at it in the context of how do you actually get to a stage where you become a nation of people who are able to be a high-wage economy, it just isn't about a miraculous silver bullet or a transformation, and this is what the Prime Minister spoke about. It was about putting the building blocks in place from an early situation, even early childhood education, whether it's around what the Minister, Paula Bennett, is working hard on around the white paper, making sure that children are brought up in families and they feel safe, that they feel wanted, needed, warm, dry, well-fed and fired up to get into the education. So from that point of view, it's looking at what we do as a society in the context of bringing through our generations, what values we have, and this was echoed constantly in the Prime Minister's statement, and that is what gives us confidence and other New Zealanders confidence in this government. Effectively, there's a whole lot of pieces to the jigsaw puzzle that have been disconnected for many, many years. This government, the Prime Minister and those ministers within Cabinet are working to bind those together so that we do definitely have a direction. And when you look at the training that vocational instruction will deliver, we look at the manufacturing side of things, the primary industry, the service industry and the social services. These are all essential parts of our community, and they are good, reliable employment opportunities, and this government is backing them, Mr Speaker. There are 4,000 places available in the trades and service academies, and what a wonderful inspiration it must be to like-minded people like myself who didn't necessarily find the whiteboard all that inspiring, but love to get my hands into the bottom and the gearbox of a motor and rip it apart and then put it back together. That sort of thing, Mr Speaker, what the Prime Minister was talking about during his statement is what is making the transition, transformation within the lives and in the classrooms and the families of New Zealand. 8,700 youth guarantee places. Those places are incredibly important because up until recently there was that opportunity to apply for a leaving certificate and get a job. How enduring that job was, we were not too sure. It was just a matter that the schools cooperated to some degree if these young ones were being a problem, and they were moved on. But there are 8,700 youth guarantee places, and those places are for 16 and 17-year-olds, Mr Speaker, at a very crucial stage in their lives. We are revisiting the modern apprenticeship scheme because it was a pretty blunt tool that actually had more money thrown at it than actually it delivered apprentices. And we are working from January 2014 to combine all apprentices within that modern apprenticeship context. And that was something that was talked about way back in about 2005 when we first came into the House here. There was policy development, and this government has taken that on board, and we're now going to implement it, because previously to be a modern apprentice you had to be between the ages of 16 and 21. If you were 22, too late, no good. And it really didn't send the right signals, Mr Speaker, but this government is addressing that issue. This government will spend another $12 million in the first year, and that money, Mr Speaker, will rise over time, and it will really be aimed at creating a culture change within New Zealand of really valuing apprentices. And when you look at the countries around the world, it's very important that we do that, because it's only Germany that actually has the lowest level of unemployed youth between that age of 18 and 25. And it was all about their structure and the way they actually value skills training. So at the moment we've got some work going on, and this government is going to keep pushing on with it because the credits and the value of apprenticeships need to have a greater content of education. And that takes us back to the reason why we have that goal of getting 85% of our children up to level 2 NCEA. And a lot of people might say, well, what's so magical about level 2? The magical thing, Mr Speaker, is that at level 2 a person is able to be an independent learner. They can do the extramural block, those distant learning courses. And that's just so very important. So this government is incredibly focused. It's being innovative. It's really elevating the aspirations of those people who want to reach out and become apprentices. The first 10,000, Mr Speaker, apprentices will, from April of this year, will receive $1,000 towards their tools and their off-course training costs, or if they're really in a priority construction trade, this government will give them $2,000. Now, I believe that this is really inspirational, and we've just got to keep pushing on with it. There's just... When I heard all the wonderful speeches coming from this side of the House, Mr Speaker, and I actually looked at the Prime Minister's statement, it is an indication that this government has an agenda. It is working solidly into a very difficult situation. It is putting this country at the forefront of economic prosperity, and it is what other countries aspire to. And I just want to say, in conclusion, the Prime Minister and this government has got it entirely right in getting the apprenticeship structure elevated to a stage that those young people who are looking at options as far back as entering their year 9 at high school can follow those vocational pathways and really prosper. So I have great pleasure in supporting the comments by the Prime Minister and his statement. Thank you.
Claire Curran.